What is going on, you guys? Today I have a different type of video. In the past I have strictly uploaded college basketball highlights, but with the cancellation of March Madness I decided we're going to go ahead and simulate the bracket as what it would have been starting before the cancellation of the tournament. Now this bracket I did find from one of the bracket analysts. I think it may have been Joe Lunardi. I found him pretty credible, so I'm going to go ahead and take what he picked would have been in the bracket, and we're just going to roll with that. So with that being said, we are going to be using this here NCAA game simulator. The home team will be the higher seed and the away team will be the lower seed. That's how we're going to do this. So looking at the bracket here, we're going to go ahead and start with the first 4 games of Texas and Richmond for the 12 seed, Boston and Robert Morris as a 16, NC State and UCLA as an 11, and Prairie View and NC Central as another 16 seed. So with all that being out of the way, let's go ahead and start with our first playing game, being Texas and Richmond for the 12 seed. Alright, so our first game, as I said, will be Texas versus Richmond in a playing game for the 12 seed. I'm just going to do one simulation, 1920, 1920. Everything's looking good. Yeah, let's get this ball rolling. Let's see who's going to move on to the second round. Alright, so we've got Texas winning 77-57 over Richmond. I personally would have gone with Richmond. Richmond was seen as one of those dark horse teams to go in and possibly make a run to the Sweet 16, but hey, you never know. Things get crazy in March. So moving on to our second game, we're going to be doing NC State versus UCLA. So for UCLA and NC State, we've got UCLA moving on to the second round, 71-59. I didn't really have an opinion on this game. I didn't keep track of either team. But hey, UCLA is going to be moving on. So moving on into our 16 seed playing games. For our first one, we have Boston versus Robert Morris. I'm going to go Boston here, and Boston does end up winning 78-69. Sure, you know, these 16 seed games are hard to pick. I always pick them just for the extra excitement to them, so I have some reason to watch. But yeah, we got Boston moving on to face number 1 seed Dayton in the second round. And for our last and final playing game, we have Prairie View A&M going up against North Carolina Central. I'm going to go NC Central with this. I just feel like they have a little more tournament experience, and Prairie View A&M walks away with a 69-54 win over NC Central. Alright, so the bracket is poorly updated. We have Boston going up against Dayton, Texas facing Butler, UCLA facing Penn State, and Prairie View A&M facing Gonzaga. So our first game in the real tournament action, we're going to start up in the top left bracket with Kansas and Siena, and we're going to go down left to right. So we're going to go Kansas, Siena, to Dayton, to Gonzaga, to Baylor. So with that being said, let's get our first game under the way, Kansas versus Siena. So I think this game should be a pretty easy pick. We're going to roll with Kansas here. I think Kansas will actually make a Final Four run this year, unlike previous years in the past. So we're going to go ahead and submit, see what goes on. And of course, Kansas wins by a 40-point margin, 93-53. What else can I say? That's pretty expected. Alright, in our second game, we have Houston and Marquette. I think Houston, is an 8 seed. They're going to be pretty dangerous in this tournament. Marquette, I don't know much about, but Houston, I know they are deep. They have the talent to make a run. But they got to get through this first game. So let's see what happens. And Marquette wins by 1 point, 68-67. That is a shocker. I did not expect Marquette to pull out. But, you know, like I said earlier, that is March. Alright, in our third game, we have Auburn versus 12 seed Liberty. Now Liberty is looked at to be another dark horse team, but Auburn started the season strong. I think they went 17-1 and 16-1, and then hit a little decline. Been struggling a little bit coming into the month of March. Liberty, I think they went 30-4. No, it's at 29-4. I don't know. Liberty had nearly 30 wins on the season. We're gonna go ahead and sim this. I won't be surprised if Liberty wins, but you never know. And Auburn wins convincingly, 74-59. 15-point win right there. Alright, next we have Wisconsin and North Texas. I believe North Texas, their tournament did not conclude, but with them winning out the regular season, that put them into the tournament. I think they're in the CUSA conference. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but I know their tournament did not complete, so this is why they are in the tournament. We're going to go ahead and submit this, and Wisconsin only wins by 9. That is surprising. I figured they would have won by a bigger margin. North Texas, you didn't really hear much about this season, but it does not matter come March. Wisconsin will move on to the round of 32. Alright, and next we have probably one of the best first round games you could have put together. Iowa versus East Tennessee State. Iowa is of course held together by junior Luke Garza, who kind of took the nation by storm this year, and East Tennessee State is one of those another dark horse mid-major schools that, if they can get past this first round, can do some damage later in the tournament, possibly see a Sweet 16, Elite 8 run. But none of that matters unless they do win this first game, which I think will probably be their toughest game of the tournament if they get through. So we're going to go ahead and see what happens in this. And like I said, East Tennessee State 62-58. Good statement win from Steve Forbes and company. East Tennessee State's got a good amount of seniors, so that experience does carry into March. Let's go ahead to the bracket and fill them in. And next we have Duke versus Belmont, a 3-14 matchup. Now last time Duke was a 3 seed, they lost to Mercer back in, I believe, 2014 it was. This Duke team, they're alright, not as good as Duke teams in the past, but I do expect them to win this game. And as we submit this, we see Duke winning by 24, as expected. No shocker here. Now up next, we have kind of a weird matchup. We have Providence and Arizona State. I didn't hear anything about Providence much this year. And Arizona State, I think they started getting hot come their conference tournament a couple games before it began. And yeah, so I guess I'm going to go Arizona State because I do not know much about them. I've heard more about Arizona State than I did Providence. So whatever happens, happens. We'll see here in a second. And Providence wins by 6, 87-81. Sure, I guess that's good. They did go chalk, so we're going to go ahead and move Providence on. And lastly, we have a 2-15 matchup, Kentucky against North Dakota State. North Dakota, they're not too bad. I wouldn't be surprised if they pull off an upset, but I think Kentucky will hold strong and do as they usually do and run through March. So let's get this going. And the Kentucky Big Blue Nation stands strong, 67-46. I expected higher scoring from both schools, but doesn't matter. A win's a win. Kentucky will be moving on. Alright, moving on, we have Dayton versus 16 seed Boston University. As we all know, Dayton should run through this game pretty simple, so we're not going to waste any time. We're going to get into it, and they do, 90-74. Now our next matchup is a toss-up between Colorado and Florida. I think Florida's been more consistent in the top 25, and if they haven't, they have been higher than Colorado all year. So I'm going to pull for Florida in this matchup. And Florida does walk away with a 74-65 victory over Colorado. I don't think Colorado's been too consistent, and if they have been in 25, I don't think they've gotten past 20 if I recall correctly. So that's why I was going for Florida. Up next, we have 5 seed Butler and 12 seed Texas. I'm going to go Butler in this matchup. Now, if it were Richmond instead of Texas, I would go Richmond. As I said, they have the potential to go deep, but with them losing the play-in game, we're going to stick with Butler here in this matchup. And my prediction once again stands correct. Butler 68 over Texas 53. Our next matchup, we have Maryland versus Akron, a 4-13 matchup. I'm going to go for Maryland. I think Anthony Cohen Jr. is going to go pretty strong in this tournament with it being his senior year. And, you know, senior guards usually do well in the tournament. So we're going to pull for Maryland. Go ahead and submit here. And Maryland pulls away by 8, 76-68. And up next, we have a 6 and 11 seed game. I'm going to go Penn State over UCLA in this one. Lamar Stevens, I think he's going to carry this team pretty far. Not pretty far, at least to the round of 32, which is this next round. Sweet 16 possibly, depending on who they're facing. UCLA, I think they're too young to fight with Penn State, so that's why we're rolling with Penn State. And I must eat my words, UCLA pulls off the upset over Penn State 63-56. That is really surprising in this occurrence, so we're going to go ahead and fill him into the bracket. In this next matchup, we have a 3-14 Villanova versus Hofstra. I'm going to go Villanova, Jay Wright. usually pretty good in March. I don't think they'll go too far, but I do think Villanova will pull away against Hofstra. And I stand correct. Villanova pulls away 75-64, moving them on to the second round. So in our next matchup, we have a 7-10 game, West Virginia versus Utah State. West Virginia, defensively, they're well-rounded. I don't think they can do enough on offense to get past Utah State. Utah State, they did win the Mountain West tournament over San Diego State, and they competed with them in their other games throughout the year. So I'm going to go Utah State in this matchup. And this is probably the biggest game to catch me off guard. West Virginia wins by 17, 63-46 over Utah State. I guess their defense held strong, heard what I said, and proved me wrong. And our last game of this left side of the bracket, we have 2-seed Florida State over Northern Kentucky. Florida State should take care of this game pretty easily. And as expected, they do, winning by 31 points, 85-54, moving them on to the round of 32. Moving on to the right side of the bracket, we have Gonzaga versus Prairie View A&M. This should go by no surprise. Gonzaga will move on. I'm straight up, they will move on. And they do, winning by 33. I think they can go pretty far this year in this tournament. In this 8-9 matchup, we go against Gonzaga. We have LSU and Oklahoma. I don't know who would win this. Oklahoma, they can be streaky, but they can also hit cold streaks, which do slow them down. LSU, I mean, it's LSU. I don't know how they did in the SEC. So I guess I'll go Oklahoma since I know more about Oklahoma. We'll find out here who will face number 1 seed Gonzaga, and it will be Oklahoma, 79-62. Our next matchup, we have Michigan going up against Yale. Yale did not play their conference tournament, so they were automatically granted access into this tournament with their outright conference regular season first place finish. That's what you want to call it. Michigan started off the year hot, simmered down a little bit. I've watched a couple other games, and they've got plenty of guys that can put the ball in the hoop. I'm going to pull for Michigan right here. And Michigan barely wins, 74-70. That's surprising. Like I said, I haven't watched too much of Yale. Watched more Michigan. Maybe Yale was a little better than I predicted. But nonetheless, Michigan does move on. In our next matchup, we have 4-seeded Oregon going up against 13-seed New Mexico State. New Mexico State is a pretty good mid-major. Oregon, however, they have Peyton Pritchard, senior guard, and I think he'll be too much for New Mexico State. However, if New Mexico State does win, I would not be surprised at all. So let's see what happens. And we got Oregon winning 78-65 as expected. So they'll be moving on to face Michigan. Up next, we have 6-seed BYU and 11-seed Indiana. BYU is always traditionally good in the tournament. They're not an easy out. Indiana, I did not know was in contention to be in the tournament. However, I have a gut feeling Indiana will win this. You need some underseed to win in each bracket. And Indiana's going to do that this game, I guarantee it. So here we go. Oh my gosh, Indiana wins by 33 points. 100 points in an NCAA tournament game. Okay, they must have been hitting on all cylinders, hitting their threes, either that or BYU could not play defense. Nonetheless, Indiana will move on. In our 3-14 matchup in this bracket, we have Seton Hall and Eastern Washington. Miles Powell, I think Seton Hall can win this. Miles Powell is a strong senior guard. However, Eastern Washington is no slouch. I think they are capable of pulling off an upset. I think Seton Hall will be too much to handle. So we're going to go Seton Hall in this game. And Seton Hall proves to be correct, 85-51, moving on to face 11-seed Indiana. Next, we have Arizona and Texas Tech. Texas Tech coming in at a 10 seed. However, Chris Beard still is coach. His defensive coaching is above average, one of the top of the country. So I'm still going to go Texas Tech after their national championship appearance last year. Chris Beard knows what it takes to get there, and I think the defense will be too good for Arizona in this matchup. And Texas Tech wins 66-56. Their defense held strong, and we'll be moving on to the next round. Lastly, we have San Diego State versus UC Irvine. I think San Diego will win. However, if a 15 were to beat a 2, I think this is the matchup right here. San Diego State started to cool off after their first loss of the year, and every team's in here is capable of pulling off an upset. So if it does happen, it will be this game, but I do not see it happen. San Diego State will be moving on. I'm wrong, but I'm right. UC Irvine will pull off the 15-2 upset and will move on to the round of 32 to face Texas Tech. Starting off our last bracket of the first round, we have Baylor and Winthrop. Coach Scott drew a Baylor just like Chris Beard of Texas Tech. Very well defensively. There should be no problem for him. And Baylor walks away with a 30-point victory, 83-50. No surprise here. Up next, probably the best 8 versus 9 matchup in the tournament, St. Mary's and Rutgers. St. Mary's is just like Gonzaga and BYU. When they get in the tournament, they're not a team to be slouched on. But Rutgers, out of nowhere, have been exceptionally well this year. I'm going to go for Rutgers just because of the new guy in the block. And yeah, no one expected him to be here. So here we go. And Rutgers wins 74-62. Up next, we have 5 seed Ohio State and 12 seed Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin, their main win of this year was beating Duke at Duke on a last-second layup. And for that, I'm going to go with SFA in this case. Ohio State, they're just as good. But I like pulling for the underdogs. We're going to go SFA in this game. Okay, Ohio State proved me wrong, winning 81-62. That's no big deal. Ohio State will move on to the next round. Up next, we have Louisville and Vermont. Vermont, I don't see them doing a thing. Louisville, they're going to roll right through them. Not much to say, so we're just going to go ahead and get this one over with. And I am wrong. Vermont wins 66-59. That is very surprising. Up next, we have Virginia and Cincinnati. Cincinnati, led by Jaron Cumberland, who is their heart and soul. But they also have Trayvon Scott, who is big on the boards. As for Virginia, Tony Bennett he's a good coach in March, minus a UMBC game. But defensively, I think Virginia will pull this one out, and I think they'll go pretty far this year, as per usual. And Virginia wins 57-52, a lot closer than I thought, but low scoring as expected. Now, 3 and 14 matchup, we have Michigan State and Bradley. Michigan State, Tom Izzo, he's the man of March. You never go against him. Bradley out of Missouri Valley won after the 1 and 2 seed, both lost in the tournament, giving them this advantage. I'm still going to go Michigan State. As I said, don't go against Tom Izzo, and that proves right. 70-53, Michigan State. Up next, we have Illinois and USC. I'm going to go Illinois. Illinois came out hot this year, stayed hot throughout the year in the Big Ten. Surprised a lot of people. I forget his name, but they do have I believe a freshman who took the country by storm and has carried them this far. So I'm going to go Illinois, and I am wrong. USC, 86-74. That is surprising. And our last game of the first round is a 2 and 15 Creighton versus Little Rock. Creighton came into the tournament in the top 10 of the polls. I believe they were top 10. I think they were 8. So that's why we're going to go Creighton in this one. And Creighton wins 80-54. No problem for them. Moving on to face USC. So after one round, taking a look at the bracket, teams that caught me by surprise is UCLA for sure. UCLA and UC Irvine both caught me by surprise, and Vermont. You could throw USC in there as well. As any Cinderellas, I like East Tennessee and Texas Tech. I like Texas Tech and East Tennessee. So we'll go ahead and get this second round, or third round, shall I say, underway, and we'll figure out what happens. So our first game of this round, we have 1 seed Kansas, 9 seed Marquette. Marquette team to be better than I thought, beating Houston, but I still think Kansas has the experience down low with Azubuike and then Devin Dotson as well. And KU proved strong, 73-64, moving on to the Sweet 16. Next, we have 4 seed Auburn and 5 seed Wisconsin. I honestly have no idea who would win this game. Yeah, I have no idea. Both teams kind of surprised me the first round. So we're going to see what happens here. And we got Auburn winning by 4, 74-70. If I were to bet, I would have bet on Auburn. But yeah, I had no idea. So in this 3 versus 11 seed for the Sweet 16, Duke and East Tennessee, I'm going to go East Tennessee. They won convincingly that first round over a strong Iowa team. Duke, like I said, not as good as they used to be. Still good, don't get me wrong. But I think East Tennessee's got some experience that Duke doesn't have. So we're going to go for East Tennessee here. And Duke wins by 8. That's okay, I guess that's expected. But I was pulling for East Tennessee. Duke will move on to the Sweet 16. As for who Duke will face, probably going to be Kentucky. Kentucky, the 2 seed, Providence, 7 seed. Not much to say. I like Kentucky's freshmen, so we're going to go Kentucky. facing Duke in the Sweet 16, and they only win by 2. I expected them to win by a little more than 2. Not a blowout, but still close. A lot closer than I thought. Kentucky will move on to the Sweet 16. Up next, we have Dayton versus Florida. I like Dayton in this one, but I won't be surprised if Florida pulls off the upset. You know, Dayton, they hung with Kansas earlier in the year. Florida is a different monster, though. I'm not saying they're better than Dayton or Kansas, but you don't sleep on these SEC Power Conference schools. Dayton, they played in the A10. I do think Obi Toppin will be able to carry them through as expected. And here we go. Oh, they win way more than I thought. Almost by 20 points. They win by 17, 75 to 58. Up next, we have 4-seed Maryland and 5-seed Butler. I'll go Maryland in this case. Like I said, Anthony Cohen Jr. being a senior should do pretty well in this tournament. Maryland also being in the Big Ten. Butler being... I don't know what Butler's in. They're in some little small rinky-dink conference. Regardless of that, I'd still pick Maryland over Butler. And Maryland proved me right, 68 to 62, moving on to the Sweet 16. So I've slept on UCLA twice this tournament in their first 2 games, playing in the first round. Villanova, still good. Coach Jay Wright still knows what he's doing. But I think I'm going to pull for UCLA in this case. Almost said Villanova. I think I'll go UCLA. Take a little risk here. 11 seed, moving on to the Sweet 16. Let's see what happens. Villanova narrowly wins by 3 points. UCLA almost pulled it off. Yeah, Jay Wright proves me wrong and right. Moving on to the Sweet 16. Now in this 2 versus 7 matchup, Florida State and West Virginia. Both teams good defensively. I think West Virginia has better defense. I think they might have the #1 defense in the country. For sure top 10. Defensively, I'll go West Virginia. Just because I think they can hold. I think Florida State's going to pull this one out. I think Florida State has more offense than West Virginia, and then will bring them over the hump. So we're going to go Florida State here, moving on to the Sweet 16. And once again, West Virginia proves me wrong. 70 to 61, they will be moving on to face Villanova in the Sweet 16. Our next matchup, Gonzaga and Oklahoma. As I said in the last round, Gonzaga should go through this bracket pretty simple. They've got the talent to hang with the big dogs, not just beating up on mid-majors anymore. I'm going to go for Gonzaga over Oklahoma. 89-63 easily. Oklahoma looks to have had a cold night. Gonzaga moves on. This next one, we have 4-seed Oregon, 5-seed Michigan. I'm going to go Michigan here. Like I said, they've got a lot of guys who can put the bucket in the hoop. If they can contain Peyton Pritchard of Oregon, it should be fine. And I think they can do just that. So we're going to go Michigan here over Oregon. And they do, 67 to 57, moving on to face Gonzaga. In this next matchup, Seton Hall and Indiana, 3 versus 11. I'm going to go Seton Hall. I think Miles Powell will keep going strong. Indiana, I don't know who they have. Honestly, I don't know who they have. So we're going to roll with Seton Hall just off of that. And Seton Hall does win 80 to 67. Pretty big win in the Sweet 16. I'm sorry, pretty big win moving on to the Sweet 16. Pretty big win for March as well. Seton Hall will be moving on. And here we go. Who would have thought we would have saw this matchup? Texas Tech versus 15-seed UC Irvine. This should be no problem for Texas Tech. Their defense will hold strong. We're going to go Texas Tech here. 73-45. Cakewalk for the Red Raiders. In our final bracket, we have Baylor versus Rutgers. Same as Texas Tech. I'm going to go Baylor. Defense should be too good for Rutgers. Let's see what happens. Wow. Rutgers destroys Baylor as the first #1 seed goes down. 79 to 54. I guess Rutgers is for real this year. Rutgers is for real. We have a 5-13 matchup, Ohio State versus Vermont. I don't know. I really don't know. We'll go Vermont just for the fun of it. Vermont over Ohio State. And I should have went Ohio State. 82 to 56. Ohio State will move on to face Rutgers. Now in this 3-6 matchup, Michigan State and Virginia. I know I said Tom Izzo is the man of March, but Virginia's defense I think is too good to not be taken lightly. I think they will go to the Final Four. We're going to go Virginia over Michigan State here. And Michigan State put on the Tom Izzo man of the March, you know. They put on the gauntlet against Virginia and won by 10. Alright, now our last game of the second round, figuring out who goes to the Sweet 16. we have Creighton and USC. I'm still going to hold with Creighton. USC I'm not too strong on. We'll go Creighton here in this game. And USC wins by 2. Wow, that is amazing. USC moving on to the Sweet 16. Who would have thought? Alright, so looking at the Sweet 16, team that surprised me. West Virginia, USC, and Rutgers, man. They surprised me. I did not expect it. We're down to 3 #1 seeds, with Baylor losing to Rutgers. So with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and get into this, see who goes to the Elite 8, starting off with Kansas versus Auburn. And just like that, 2 #1s have gone down. Auburn beating KU 72-61. The door is wide open now. I thought KU had a good shot at winning. That proved to be wrong. Auburn moving on to the Elite 8. Up next, we have a good blue blood battle, Duke and Kentucky. We'll go Kentucky in this case. I think they're a little more talented than Duke. We'll see what happens here. And Kentucky does win 81-70, pretty easily over Duke. So up next, we have Dayton and Maryland. I'm all in on Dayton right now. We're going to go Dayton over Maryland. I think Obi Toppin and forget who their second scorer is. He shoot lights out. I think Obi Toppin and company will take over Maryland, and that proves me wrong. Maryland beating Obi Toppin and company. 1 #1 seed remains, and that is Gonzaga. Maryland moves on to the Elite 8. In this final game of the left side of the bracket, we have Villanova and West Virginia. I don't know what to expect out of this one, so I'm just going to go ahead and see what happens. Whoa! 51-38? West Virginia's defense is strong. West Virginia could go all the way. Their defense is apparently best in the nation, holding Villanova to 38 points. Props to Villanova. Props to West Virginia, my bad. West Virginia moving on to face Maryland in the Elite 8. Other side of the bracket, will we see our last remaining #1 go down? I don't believe so. Mark Few, he's been in this before. He knows the run of the table. Juwan Howard in Michigan, rookie coach. He doesn't have the experience as far as coaching goes. So we're going to go Gonzaga in this matchup. And Gonzaga does win 81-71, moving on to the Elite 8. Next up, we have Seton Hall and Texas Tech. I'm still high on Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech is going to put a stop to Miles Powell in this game. Almost forgot his name. Yeah, Texas Tech is going to go back to the Elite 8. And they do just that, winning 78-58, shutting down our man Miles Powell of Seton Hall. Up next, we have Ohio State and 9-seeded Rutgers. Just for the hell of it, I'm going to go Rutgers in this one. I think it'd be cool to see them in the Elite 8. No one expected it. We're going to go Rutgers over Ohio State. Prove me wrong. Ohio State moving on. Who would have thought Ohio State would be in the Elite 8? I sure didn't. But props to Ohio State. Up next, we got Michigan State and USC. I'm holding with Michigan State. Like I said, you guys probably know by now. Tom Izzo is the man of March. So we're going to hold strong with that. Michigan State moving on past USC to face. Whoa! USC moving on to the Elite 8. Who would have thought? That's insane. USC moving on to face Ohio State, had a chance of going to the Final Four. Looking at this Elite 8 and the teams remaining, 1 #1 seed, 1 #2, 2 5s, 2 10s, 1 4, and 1 7. My Final Four predictions, I'll go Auburn, West Virginia, Gonzaga, and USC. Probably the craziest. I don't think anyone's predicting that. We're going to see what happens. I'm speechless. Starting with Auburn and Kentucky. So Auburn and Kentucky, I think Auburn's going to move on, like I just said. Get a second straight Final Four appearance. I won't be surprised if Kentucky wins, but I think Auburn will be motivated. So let's see what goes on. Auburn over Kentucky. Auburn will prevail over Kentucky by 16, 84-68, moving on to their second straight Final Four appearance. Alright, Maryland and West Virginia for the trip to the Final Four. Like I said, West Virginia, after completely destroying Villanova in their last matchup. I think they'll carry that on. Let's see what happens, man. West Virginia narrowly loses 79-78. Defense couldn't hold strong. Maryland will be facing Auburn with a chance to go to the national championship. But will our last #1 seed prevail strong and make it to the Final Four? We'll find out here. I think they will. Texas Tech isn't a slouch, as I've said. I'm still going to go with Gonzaga. Let's see what happens. And Texas Tech wins by 8, proving me wrong once again. No #1 seed will win the tournament. This has got to be the craziest March we have seen in a long time. If this was real, I wouldn't know what to think. Texas Tech moving on as a 10 seed. And I just realized we could have a 10 versus 10 matchup in the Final Four. If USC pulls this out, I'm going to go USC. They proved me wrong all tournament, so we're going to stick with them. If they pull this out, this could be, we'll have a 10 seed in the national championship. So here we go. And USC's hot streak comes to an end. Ohio State is too strong for them. Ohio State will be facing Texas Tech with a trip to the national championship at stake. So here we go. 5 seed Auburn versus 4 seed Maryland. 10 seed Texas Tech versus 5 seed Ohio State. This is March. I mean, what can you say? This is the craziest time of the year. I'll go Auburn and Texas Tech. That's what I'm going to go with. As I said Auburn will win this. I think they've got the experience. Maryland does not. Let's see if that holds strong. And Maryland will be going to the national championship. So here we go. Who will be facing Maryland? Will it be 5 seed Ohio State? Will it be 10 seed Texas Tech? Like I said, I'm going Texas Tech all the way here. And Ohio State wins. Is this a Big Ten championship? Ohio State will be facing Maryland in the NCAA championship. So as for who will win this, I have no clue. I have no idea. This is the 3rd or 4th time they're facing each other this year, both being from the Big Ten. I don't know. Let's just see who wins. Who will win the NCAA championship? And Maryland will win by 1 point, 74-73. Crazy. Mark Turgeon and company, Anthony Cohen Jr. apparently went crazy in March, and they pull out the utmost unpredictable victory we've probably seen in March. Who would have thought Maryland would be national champions? But with the final look at the bracket, Maryland prevails strong. I sure wasn't expecting this. If you guys have done this on your own, let me know who won out of your bracket. Did you pick Maryland winning? Probably not, unless you're a Maryland fan. Yeah, you know what they say, March is the best time of the year. Brackets busted. I sure did not pick Maryland. That's gonna wrap this up, man. And I wish this was a real March. I really wish the tournament was going, but I understand why it is not. If you guys want to see me simulate this on video game, I got NCAA 09. If you want to see me simulate on that, let me know. I'll probably end up doing it just to get some content out there. But yeah, that's gonna wrap this up. Maryland are national champions. That's absolutely crazy.